The following podcast may contain adult language and an abundance of salt. So get ready, nerds, because we're talking Foundation Episode 3, The Mathematician's Ghost. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us on another episode of the Salty Nerd Podcast. We're going to be talking about Foundation's spoiler-free review for Episode 3, and I'm joined, as always, by my fantastic panel of nerds. Matt Vader, 74, is here. Welcome, sir.
Hi.
How you doing?
Am I what?
Are you good with this highbrow? Sorry, I can't this early. Sorry. Go ahead.
Are we a minute in? What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still in.
Yeah?
Yeah. I turn it on, and for some reason I pay attention until it's over, which is weird for me sometimes. I'm enjoying this show so far.
Okay, cool.
As woke as people say it is, I don't care. Whatever.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm not on Twitter. I haven't heard that.
Just check our comments out. It's interesting.
Jude is over here.
Drinking
already.
Jeez, we're doing shots. It's like, we're talking about that show. Bam. Yeah, that's it. I understand.
Jude's here. Welcome, Jude. How you doing?
Hi.
And Matthew Kadish, who is loving this show.
I am. I watched this episode like 5 different times.
God, you're a mad
And
man.
I listened to the official podcast, both episodes. So I have a lot to say.
I listened to the first official podcast.
Is it good?
It's okay.
No, it's really not good.
Oh no!
But they do drop interesting little tidbits.
You got some dude who probably drinks too many soy lattes talking to Goyer, and
Cool.
that's it, man.
Excellent. All right, guys. This is spoiler free.
Talking about how shitty his dad is growing up.
He did spend a lot of time on his
Well,
shitty
I had a
dad.
terrible dad. My dad, he made me read these books, but I told him to fuck off. But then I read it when I was older, and I thanked him for it when he died on his deathbed. That's basically the episode.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not going to listen to that.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get into a quick little review, we'll take a quick break, listen to some sponsors. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Hey, if you like what we do here and you want to get our official, full spoiler deep dive into this episode, go to saltynerdclub.com. That is where we get our spoiler filled episode of Foundation. You join the club. It's only $5 a month. We really appreciate the help. And you get access to 4 exclusive podcasts every single month with Discord access. We do live streams. We do video games. We do all kinds of cool stuff with our patrons. Mm-hmm. So jump in there and join the club.
All commercial free.
All commercial free. We have a ton of fun with the community that we have there. We've gained a bunch of new patron members. Thank you guys so much for your support. We hope you enjoy the exclusive content. So, Mr. Kadish, what is the synopsis for this episode?
All right. So before we get into the episode, I just want to kind of cover what they the tidbits that they dropped in the official the official Foundation podcast. And it's that, so Goyer mentioned that before Apple was willing to pony up the money for the show, he had to sit down and give them his plan for all 8 seasons. So he knows the general overview of every season that they have planned, which I thought was very interesting. Goyer also revealed that he's a total douche, which I've known for years. He's just, oh God, I hate listening to that guy talk. But he's turning in a good show, so I can't really be too critical of him right now. So Goyer comes from the school of Christopher Nolan, and he said that basically they're using nothing but practical sets and props as much as possible. So all the location, this isn't volume stuff. This is actually when on location shot this show. A lot of the sets are actually built. So they're not as heavily reliant on CGI as something as The Mandalorian, which I thought was very interesting.
That's cool.
Goyer's also working with Robin Asimov, Isaac Asimov's daughter, and the Asimov estate. And he kind of in the first episode of the podcast, he went through how he was a little bit worried about pitching the genetic dynasty idea to them, but they eventually agreed that it would be a good addition to the story. And they've approved basically all the changes that Goyer has wanted to do with the show. They also talked about the gender swapping of the characters, and Goyer said that because Asimov didn't really have any female characters in the books, that they just wanted to make it a little bit more diverse by adding in the female characters. And so far, I've been liking what they've been doing with the gender swap characters. So I'm kind of okay with it. I know.
I don't know.
It's one thing to be we're going to gender swap one character, but they've done that to more than one.
And they're main characters.
Yeah. So far.
I mean, my understanding is Empire's not even Empire in the books, right?
Correct.
The way they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only one Cleon in the books.
Yeah, which is fascinating to me because in this particular episode, the first 20 minutes
it's all about it. Yeah.
Was awesome. It was a really good part of the show.
Yeah, and you know, the
it
more
was all about him.
The more I think about the genetic dynasty, like they're creating a continuity of adversarial, you know, like antagonists to the Foundation, because it's such a trip to think like, you know, it's the same character, but it's different, like as time goes on. And one of the interesting things that Goyer mentioned in the podcast was that there's going to be a lot of time jumps in the show as the story unfolds, as we saw in this episode, where it goes like back 400 years, then ahead 450 years.
At least,
like that.
Yeah. At least they make a point of telling you when that happens.
Yeah.
I hate it when shows.
that.
I hate it when shows do that and they just make
The Witcher.
they just make you figure it out.
The Witcher was confusing as hell.
Yeah,
I didn't like
It was
episode-
intentionally confusing.
Yeah, in season 1 of The Witcher, though, it was just like I was confused.
Yeah. Yeah. This one they make a point 400 years ago.
And the story they're telling, it kind of, you can see how they're kind of trying to fold them all together. So it makes a little more sense.
Yeah, like they even said in the podcast that they're looking at time as like its own character, and so like they want to play with that. And one of the interesting things that Goyer mentioned was that Asimov never finished the 1,000-year story that he set out to tell. Like he got up to about 500 years, and so one of the goals of the show is to actually complete the story. And so like they're going to go the full 1,000 years on the series, whereas the books only covered about the first 500 years.
Hopefully he doesn't been up.
yeah. We've seen that go bad.
Well, one of the interesting things about episode 2 of the podcast was they introduced the other kind of like co-showrunner / producer of the show, which is Jane Espenson.
Really?
And yeah, so like,
Don't you try to make me like this show.
so if you don't know who Jane Espen is, she was like one of the big writers and producers of the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer series.
This makes me furious
She-
that you're saying this.
like she's one of Joss Whedon's like proteges, and like she's gone on. She worked on Game of Thrones. She worked on The Nevers. She did Once Upon a Time. Like she's been involved in a lot of like really good shows.
Oh, we're gonna make Jude like this show.
Oh, God damn it.
and so like she didn't have anything to do with the first 2 episodes, but I think Josh Friedman, who was the showrunner for the Snowpiercer show, him and Goyer worked on those 2, but then Jane Espen came in. Espenson, and she basically from episode 3 to 10 was involved with the show, and so her fingerprints are on this now.
My whole body just got hot with rage.
All right. So are we ready to get into it?
We are. So one
Okay.
of the interesting things about this episode is that it starts off with what Goyer calls a short film, which is basically the first 20 minutes, as Vader said, is a tale about the Empire and the decline of Dusk, the first Cleon, and the rise of a new Cleon. So like, we kind of see the beginning and end of like a new cycle.
I think I said in our first episode, or maybe it was the second episode, I don't know, but I was curious about how the succession,
How it worked.
it worked. And I just found it really fascinating. And I really found it fascinating how all these clones kind of grow up with they end up having like different personalities from each other.
Slightly.
It's
yeah.
slightly different. You know, it was like when we were walking through the Hall of Head statues or whatever. And it's like Cleon the thinker, Cleon
The alchemist,
the alchemist, Cleon the painter. You know, those I made those up, but they
No,
all
I
have.
think you were actually right there. Yeah.
But they all have their own little quirks
Yeah.
that makes them unique from their predecessor, and I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
I was bored out of my mind for the first like 15 minutes.
Oh,
of
I
this
was
episode.
not.
I was so
I
bored
was
because here's like we talked about this in the last couple of episodes. Like, oh, this is how the Cleon Empire works, where one is genetically born, and then as he ages, he takes over as the older one dies off, and that's kind of the cycle that they've been having for the past 400 years.
Yeah, and,
so
and it was kind of a trip to see like the new day and the new dusk, and it's like, oh, in the previous episodes that was the dusk was
yeah,
day,
yeah,
and day was dawn.
so wait, the Dusk is the one that hung everybody.
yes,
The new Dusk is the one that hung everybody in that last episode.
Yep.
Yeah, it was cool.
It's
And
cool.
then they have like a baby come out.
yeah.
Yeah. So it was just interesting to see how
It
were-
was
how
cool,
they worked it in.
But
So-
like I kind of already got that from the first 2 episodes. I kind of understood how this cycle worked.
Yeah,
So to have it be like played out over 20, 30 minutes, I was kind of like, oh, yeah,
maybe I needed to see the ritual.
yeah, no, that's fine. I'm
pageantry.
not complaining about it. For me, I was just kind of like, yeah, I already kind of like speculated that this is how it worked in the first place. So I didn't really need to see it for 20 minutes. but I get why they did it.
And they were also setting up the relationship between what's her name?
Demerzel.
And the Cleons.
Yeah.
So,
and what there is at the end of this little montage thing, or not montage, and at the end of the short film that they did about the Cleons, that's when it clicked in my head. The reason why they showed all this is because the New Day, who is like at the end of this is like 17 or something.
Mm-hmm.
No, the New Dawn.
I'm sorry, the New Dawn. He's like 17, and something's different about him.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in the spoiler section, but I thought that was very, very cool.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about this episode is that it's broken up into two parts. So the first 20 minutes or so is a story about the Empire and the new cycle of Cleons. And then we get to the Foundation and their landfall on Terminus and the creation of the colony. And it's Salvor Hardin's story. And it kind of picks up from the end of episode 1, where we kind of see her approach like the vault. And one of the interesting things that Goyer mentioned in the podcast was that, so in the books, there's a thing called the time vault, and the time vault opens at particular periods of time, and a hologram of Harry Seldon pops up and basically tells them, okay, this is what you're going to do now. And Goyer said, like, if you think you know what this vault is, you're wrong. And so it's not going to be something directly from the book. They're going to put like a little twist on it. And you kind of get a little bit more exploration into the vault and like, you know, Salvor Hardin's relationship with it in this episode, which I thought was really interesting.
Cool. Jude, you just rolled your eyes.
Fuck, I knew you were going to come straight to me.
You don't get to roll your eyes and then not say anything. So go. What's up?
Okay, I'll tell you.
All right.
After she drinks a lot.
After she drinks the entire bottle of beer. This is what we do, folks.
And that's all I have to say about that.
Really? That's all you're going to say?
No. I fucking hate this show.
Why?
Because
it changes too much?
Reasons. No, because, okay, I've been trying to separate myself from the book. And I was talking to Kadish about this throughout the week because he's like, I don't understand. And I was like, I don't understand why you like it. So I'm not a sci-fi girl. I am a fantasy girl and a horror and a cheesy and a campy girl. Yes, I read the book. I would not say that I loved the book, but I read it and I know what happened in it. And this is a show based on the books. That's not based on the books. And it's totally confusing. And so now I have to separate myself from the books and just watch it for what it is. And for me, it's not for me. It's not anything that I would ever be interested in as content that I would watch for enjoyment. So I don't like it. And because I have to watch it for this show, now I hate it. However, I will say that the first 20 minutes, I actually was able to separate the books from the show. And I kind of got to know the character of the Dusk going out. And it was a little bit confusing. I had to rewatch a little bit. And but like once I kind of got like, okay, I think it was like 19 years and like these are the same characters. Because at first I wasn't sure if Dusk, because in episode 2, Dusk is failing. And I wasn't sure if what happened between then in this episode, if he had already died or if this was still him. So once I realized that was still him, I was still like, oh, I know that guy. Yeah. So I was still like following his journey and I was paying attention and invested in the story of these 3 emperors and what's happening there. And then once it goes to, it's not Trantor, it's
Terminus.
Terminus, thank you. Once it goes to Terminus, I was like, nah, checked out.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, I really love the Terminus part because, the show is kind of speeding up the timeline from the books because so in this one, there's like an invasion kind of subplot that happens in I believe it's the 4th story in the books, the 4th short story. And the first Salvor Hardin story is really kind of like a political thing where like she's taken on the trustee board of Foundation, and she kind of basically takes control of, or I should say, he basically takes control of the colony in the books. And so like that one, it's kind of like not very action heavy. It's all like very political and kind of like Game of Thronesy.
They kind of really kind of hurried through all that stuff.
Which
is fine. I appreciate that.
So they're kind of condensing a lot of stuff, like moving stuff up. And we're going to have a lot to say about that in our spoiler section. But I really enjoyed the Trantor, or I should say the Terminus stuff, because now we're getting into the meat of the story.
I mean, there's always stuff in books that you can't.
That
doesn't really
Yeah.
translate well to a visual medium like this.
Yeah.
So
you have to take some liberties.
Yeah.
Everybody always does. There's no direct book adaptation to anything. I think the first episode of Game of Thrones is as close as I've ever seen a book adaptation go. And even that glossed over a couple things.
Except for the whole opening scene of that episode.
No, but I mean, like
books.
I read the first, like part of the first book, and then I got bored with it. But I was like reading it, and I'm like, oh, I remember seeing this happen in the show. But anyway, all right. So that's kind of. Anybody have any closing thoughts for the non-spoiler section? Did you enjoy this episode, Vader?
I did.
Okay.
I enjoyed the characters and everything, and I enjoyed the story. The invasion. I'm a little bit intrigued about what's going to happen there.
Okay.
I like the new guy.
Yeah, I did with the beard.
That brings the chocolate. Brings the chocolate.
Very Han Solo-esque. Yeah.
I thought it was cool with how they get a little science fiction with him. He's like 90 years old.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, yeah, but I'm in hypersleep half my life, so I'm really only 35.
Which is a thing that we talked about in Pitch Black.
Yes.
Yeah. For sure. And that makes sense.
Yeah. It's very sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, it's very sci-fi.
I like it.
I like it. So I'm curious about that character, and I'm still in. I know we're only 3 episodes into 8 years of content, so I hope I'm still in, and it has me intrigued.
Okay.
And, so sure.
And Jude, are you still hate watching this show?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Cool. Is that your closing
100%.
thought?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hate it. I hate it forever. I hope I can get into it because I've committed to it. And in fact, Kadish and I made a deal. If by episode 5 I'm still this miserable, we will look into replacing me. Because I fucking hate it. I hate it so much.
Wow.
If you have listened to our Falcon and Winter Soldier review, I think I hate this more.
Really?
Yeah. So if you can compare it to that.
That seems.
I get it.
And this is such a far better show.
Yeah, I know, right?
Jesus. Stop ruining our relationship.
Kadish, closing thoughts on this episode.
Yeah, so I feel like the first 2 episodes and the first 20 minutes of this episode were like a really good kind of prequel to the main story of Foundation, and now we're into going forward the main meat of what's going to be happening for like the next 1,000 years.
Okay.
Because there was these first 3 episodes were like tons of setup, tons and tons of setup. Not a whole lot of action. Stuff happened, but with the way that they're setting up the time jumps, we're going to be seeing like stuff happen in the far future, stuff that happened in the far past, and it all kind of ties into what's happening in the present. And I'm really excited about it because I feel like they've actually got a plan and they're actually sticking to their plan, and I'm on board with it.
Cool. For me, my closing thoughts, I was a little bored during this episode, again, because it's mostly set up. There's not a lot of action, but I did appreciate the first 20 minutes, that short film. It was beautifully shot, as the show has been so far. And I liked the character interaction with the recycling of the same person just getting older and aging out, and then a new one being born. It was cool. I already kind of knew that's how it worked.
Well, yeah,
so I didn't really need to see it, but it was still fascinating to watch. So I'm kind of in between, like not caring and also being like, oh, this is very interesting. It's a weird middle ground for me. The second half of the episode was cool. I want to see what happens with that, and that introduction to the new character. I'm very interested. I hope he sticks around because he's the one that I gravitated towards.
Yeah, he's kind of.
I'm like, oh, he's cool. He's kind of suave.
He's Han Solo.
Yeah, he's Han Solo. I'm like,
he's also not in the books.
Of course not. Of course not.
That sucks.
Whatever. All right, guys. For our continuation and the spoiler heavy, where we just go full nitty gritty salt, we dump whatever,
all of our theories, our thoughts, our everything that we can say that we might get taken down off of YouTube or something like that, and all kinds of cool stuff. Go to saltynerdclub.com, join the club membership. There you're going to get access to our spoiler heavy reviews of Foundation, along with a ton of other content, our backlog of like the last 2 years, and then Discord access and all kinds of really cool stuff. All right, let's get out of here. Vader, where can they find you on the socials?
You can find me at MattVader74 on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and the other places.
All right. And Jude, where can they convince you that this is a good show?
No. Fuck you. Don't come for me. Pass.
At I am Jude Juju on Twitter.
You can find me at I am Jude Juju on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. But I swear to God, if you come for me and try to make me like this show, I will block you.
Blocked.
And Matthew Kadish, where can they find you in Theorycraft on Foundation?
You can find me at Matthew Kadish, Kadish on Twitter. KadishBooks.com will take you to my Amazon page, and check out our Facebook group over on Facebook. Just search for The Salty Nerd. You can find it very easily that way.
All right. And I am your host, Alex, the Salty Nerd. You can catch me on our Discord app, saltynerddiscord.com. We'll be talking about Foundation and C and all the other TV shows and movies that we're talking about on the podcast. And as always, stay salty, my friends.